In my years of ministry, I've had the privilege of meeting countless people, hearing countless stories. You might think you've seen every facet of human nature, that nothing can truly surprise you. But life, with its infinite wisdom, always has a way of revealing another lesson, another opportunity for growth. And this particular story, this encounter I'm about to share, it still brings a thoughtful smile to my face even now. It happened about 3 years ago. I was flying from Los Angeles to New York for a business meeting. As a businessman and author, I often travel for events, conferences, or to oversee various aspects of our ministry's outreach. Years ago, when I had the opportunity to invest in SkyWest, a regional airline, and eventually became a majority owner, it wasn't just a financial venture. I saw it as an extension of our message of valuing every individual. I wanted to ensure that the spirit of service, dignity, and treating people with respect was paramount. That every passenger, and I mean every single one, felt valued and seen. Now, as a pastor and television preacher, you quickly learn that true influence comes not from outward display, but from a spirit of humility and genuine connection. I've always believed that our character, our compassion, speaks far more powerfully than any title or accomplishment. That's why, when I travel, I make it a point to do so modestly, to be just another passenger, blending in without any special requests or an entourage. It's important to me to remain grounded. So that day, I was dressed simply, comfortable slacks, a button-down shirt, and a light sport coat. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that would announce television preacher or successful entrepreneur. Just practical, comfortable attire for a long flight. I had my first-class ticket, seat 2A, a window seat, and I was looking forward to a quiet flight where I could review some documents and perhaps meditate or catch a short nap. I arrived at LAX early, as I always do. Punctuality is a principle my mother instilled in me, and it's served me well through all these years. I went through security without any fuss, grabbed a healthy green juice, and made my way to the gate. The flight was boarding on time, and when they called for first-class passengers, I gathered my carry-on and headed down the jetway. Now, when I stepped onto that plane, I noticed him immediately. You know how sometimes you just get a profound feeling about someone? He was standing in the aisle near the front, and even from behind, you could sense this was a man who held himself in extremely high regard. He wore an expensive suit, and I mean expensive, probably Italian, custom-tailored, the kind of suit that costs more than most people make in a month. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, his haircut was precise, and he wore a watch that caught the light every time he moved his wrist. One of those timepieces that's more about status than telling time. But it wasn't just the clothes that struck me, it was the attitude, the way he stood, the way he gestured impatiently at the flight attendant, the way he seemed to occupy more space than he needed to, both physically and energetically. You could practically see a palpable sense of self-importance radiating off him. I made my way down the aisle, offering a polite nod and a smile to the crew, and when I reached row 2, I stopped. There he was, sitting in my seat, seat 2A, the window seat I'd selected when I booked the flight weeks earlier. He had his laptop open, his briefcase on the seat next to him, and he was typing away furiously, completely oblivious to the fact that he was in someone else's assigned boss seat. I've always believed in approaching situations with grace and a calm spirit. In my sermons, I often speak about the power of choosing peace over conflict. While I might address difficult truths from the pulpit, in real life, my approach is always rooted in respect and finding common ground. So I cleared my throat gently and said, "Excuse me, sir, I believe you might be in my assigned seat." He didn't even look up, just kept typing, as if I hadn't spoken at all. I waited a moment, giving him the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps he didn't hear me. The plane was filling up. There was the hum of conversation. So I spoke a bit louder. "Excuse me, this is seat 2A. That's my assigned seat." This time he looked up, and the glance he gave me, it spoke volumes. It was as if he had instantly categorized me, dismissed me as insignificant. His eyes swept over my face, my attire, and I could almost see the judgment forming behind those cold, calculating eyes. He perceived someone who simply didn't matter, someone easily ignored. "The seat's taken," he stated flatly, returning his attention to his laptop. Just like that, no apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement that he might be in the wrong. Just 3 words delivered with complete dismissal, as if that settled the matter entirely. I felt a stirring within me. Not anger, I've learned to surrender those emotions, but a profound sadness. a disappointment in seeing such a lack of grace in another human being. "I'm sorry," I said, keeping my voice even, "but I selected this seat when I booked my ticket. I have seat 2A on my boarding pass. Perhaps there's been a mix-up with your seat assignment." He sighed heavily, the kind of exaggerated sigh that's meant to communicate what an immense inconvenience you're being. He closed his laptop with a sharp snap and finally turned to look at me directly. "Look, old man," he said, and I remember thinking not about the words themselves, but the absolute contempt behind them. It wasn't about my age, but the belief that I was beneath his notice, an inconvenience to be brushed aside. "I'm not moving. I have important work to do. I need this window seat for my presentation, and I don't have time for this. There are plenty of other seats on this plane. Why don't you move to the back and find one there?" The back. He actually told me to move to the back, like I was some kind of second-class citizen who should be grateful just to be on the plane at all. The flight attendant, a young woman named Sarah, I remember her name because of what happened later, had been watching this exchange from the galley. She came over quickly, her professional smile firmly in place, though I could see the concern in her eyes. "Sir," she addressed the man in the suit, "may I see your boarding pass? We need to make sure everyone is in their correctly assigned seats before we can close the door." He waved his hand dismissively. "I'm in first class. That's all that matters. This seat is fine." "I understand, sir," Sarah replied, "but this gentleman has seat 2A assigned on his boarding pass. If you could show me your ticket, we can find your correct seat." I said, "I'm not moving." His voice rose sharply, loud enough that other passengers were starting to turn and stare. "I am a platinum elite member of this airline. Do you know how much money I spend on flights every year? Do you have any idea who I am?" And there it was, the inevitable question of someone whose entire identity is wrapped up in external status. "Do you know who I am?" As if a title or financial standing somehow grants immunity from basic human decency. Sarah remained calm and professional. "Sir, I'm sure we can resolve this quickly if you could just show me your boarding pass." He reached into his jacket pocket with an irritated jerk and pulled out his boarding pass, practically throwing it at her. She looked at it, and I saw her expression change slightly. She glanced at me, then back at him. "Sir, your assigned seat is 5C, the middle seat in row 5. This gentleman is correct. He has seat 2A. The man's face flushed red. "That's impossible. I booked a window seat. I specifically requested a window seat. I'm not sitting in a middle seat like some economy passenger. Fix it." "I apologize for any confusion, sir," Sarah said, maintaining her composure admirably. "But according to our system, you're assigned to 5C. All the other window seats in first class are taken. If you'd like, I can check to see if there are any available upgrades or alternative seating options on a later flight." A later flight? He stood up abruptly, and for a moment I thought he might actually become physically aggressive. "Do you have any idea what I have riding on this trip? I have a meeting with investors in New York that could make or break a $50 million deal. I need to work on this flight. I need this seat. And some old man who probably got his ticket on discount isn't going to ruin this for me." There was a moment of profound silence. The entire first-class cabin was watching now. Other passengers in their seats, flight attendants paused in their pre-flight duties, everyone frozen, waiting to see what would happen next. I could have told him right then and there, could have pulled out my identification, could have quietly informed him that I wasn't just any passenger, but something in me resisted. Perhaps it was a quiet curiosity, a desire to see if this man had any measure of grace or basic human respect buried beneath all that arrogance. "Sir," I said quietly, "I understand you're under pressure. Business can be stressful, but this is my assigned own seat. I arrived on time, and I'm simply asking you to move to your own seat. That's all." He laughed, actually laughed, a short barking sound completely devoid of humor. "You know what your problem is, old-timer? You're from a different generation. You don't understand how the world works now. It's about efficiency, about making things happen, about results. People like me, we drive this economy. We make deals. We move billions of dollars. And people like you," he looked me up and down again, "you're just in the way." I've been spoken to dismissively before in my years in ministry, business, and public life. You develop a thick skin, but there was something about this particular dismissal that resonated deeply. Not because it personally wounded me, but because of what it represented. This unsettling attitude that some people matter more than others, that wealth and status somehow grant the right to treat others as if they're invisible, as if their inherent dignity doesn't count. The captain had been informed of the delay and came out of the cockpit. He was a veteran pilot, someone I'd actually met a few times over the years, though he showed no sign of recognizing me in my casual attire. "Gentlemen, Pom," he said firmly, "we need to resolve this now. We're delaying the flight." "Sir," he addressed the man in the suit, "you need to move to your assigned seat, or I'm going to have to ask you to leave the aircraft." "You're going to throw me off?" The man's voice dripped with disbelief and indignation. "Do you know how many flights I take within this airline? Do you know that I could make one phone call and have your job? I know people high up in this company, very high up." The captain didn't flinch. "Sir, FAA regulations require all passengers to be in their assigned seats. This isn't negotiable. You have two choices: sit in seat 5C or leave the aircraft. You have 60 seconds to decide." For a long moment, the man just stood there, clearly weighing his options, probably calculating whether he could actually afford to miss this flight. Finally, with a look of pure venom, he grabbed his briefcase and laptop and pushed past me, roughly, deliberately bumping my shoulder as he went. "This isn't over," he muttered. "You just made a very big mistake, old." He threw himself into seat 5C with such force that the passengers on either side of him actually leaned away. He sat there radiating fury, his jaw clenched, his fingers white-knuckled on the armrests. I settled into my seat, my correctly assigned seat, and pulled out my phone to send a quick message before we took off. Sarah came by and quietly apologized for the incident. "Please don't worry about it," I told her with a smile. "You handled that beautifully, professional and calm. That's exactly the kind of service I like to see." She seemed relieved and thanked me before moving on to complete the pre-flight checklist. The flight took off smoothly. I did try to work on my documents, but I kept stealing glances back at row 5. The man was working furiously on his laptop, occasionally making calls during the period when devices were allowed, his voice carrying, even though he was clearly trying to speak quietly. I could hear snippets: incompetent staff, unacceptable treatment, formal complaint, someone will pay for this. About an hour into the flight after the meal service, I decided it was time. I pressed the call button, and when Sarah came over, I asked her quietly if I could speak with the head flight attendant and the captain when convenient. A few minutes later, I was invited to the small area near the cockpit. The head flight attendant, Michael, and Captain Rodriguez were both there. "Is everything all right, Pastor?" Michael glanced at my ticket information on his tablet, and I saw his eyes widen as he recognized the name. Then he looked at my face more carefully, and the recognition was complete. Oh my goodness, Pastor Osteen, and I am so sorry, I had no idea." I gently held up a hand, a quiet smile on my face. "Please, no need for apologies, Michael. You couldn't have known, and frankly, that's precisely how I prefer it. But I did want to discuss the passenger in 5C. Has he made any formal complaints yet?" Captain Rodriguez nodded grimly. "He's demanded to speak with me twice. He wants to file complaints against Sarah, against you, against the airline. He's threatening lawsuits and says he's going to make sure everyone involved loses their jobs." I nodded slowly. "What's his name?" Michael checked his tablet. "Marcus Thornton. He's listed as a Platinum Elite member. Flies with us frequently for business." "Mr. Thornton," I repeated. "And he really does fly with us regularly. About twice a month, according to his record. Usually first class, always between LA and New York or Chicago." I thought about it for a moment. Here was a man who spent considerable money with the airline I owned, who flew regularly, who should have been exactly the kind of customer we valued. But he was also someone who treated people, staff, and fellow passengers alike with contempt and disrespect. He represented something I'd spent my entire business life fighting against: the idea that money gave you the right to be cruel. "Here's what I'd like to do," I told them. "When we land, I'd like you to arrange for Mr. Thornton to be met by airport services. Tell him that his complaint has been taken very seriously and that senior management would like to speak with him immediately to address his concerns. Bring him to the airline's executive lounge at JFK. Can you arrange that?" They both nodded, looking curious but professional. "And please make sure Sarah knows she did nothing wrong. In fact, I want her commended for her professionalism under difficult circumstances. Make a note in her file." "Yes, sir, absolutely," Michael said. When we landed at JFK, I gathered my things and was one of the first off the plane. I made my way quickly to the executive lounge, a space I'd had redesigned just last year to be more welcoming and comfortable. I asked the staff there to prepare the small conference room and to bring Mr. Thornton there when he arrived. Then I waited. About 20 minutes later, I heard voices outside. The door opened and Marcus Thornton strode in, still wearing that expensive suit, still radiating that same self-importance. But now there was also satisfaction on his face. He thought he was about to watch people lose their jobs. He thought justice, his version of it, was about to be served. He stopped short when he saw me sitting there alone at the conference table. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "I'm supposed to be meeting with senior management." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Please have a seat, Mr. Thornton." And "I'm not sitting down with you. I'm here to file a complaint about you, among others. Where's the manager?" I stood up slowly, walked to the small credenza on the side of the room, and poured 2 glasses of water. I brought one back and set it in front of the empty chair. "Mr. Thornton, my name is Joel Osteen. You might know me from television or my books, but that's not why I'm here today. I'm here because I own this airline. Majority shareholder. I'm as senior as management gets. I've seen a lot of expressions in my years in ministry and public speaking. I've watched people portray joy, sorrow, revelation, and transformation, but nothing I'd ever seen quite matched what happened to Marcus Thornton's face in that moment. The color drained from his cheeks, his mouth opened and closed without sound. His briefcase slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a thud. Yes, I said simply. "And before you say anything else, I want you to listen. Really listen, because what I'm about to tell you is more important than your deal, more important than this flight, more important than whether or not you keep your platinum status with this airline." I sat back down and waited until he, moving like a man in a dream, slowly lowered himself into the chair across from me. "Mr. Thornton," I began, my voice calm but firm, "earlier today you referred to me as an old man. You told me to move to the back of the plane. You treated me as if my presence, my time, my very dignity meant nothing compared to yours. And truthfully, if it had only been about me, I likely would have let it pass. We all encounter moments of discourtesy, but it wasn't just about me, was it? You treated Sarah, a dedicated flight attendant, simply doing her job, with disdain. You dismissed Captain Rodriguez, a man of great experience and responsibility. You created an atmosphere of discomfort for every passenger in that first-class cabin. And you did all of this truly believing that your wealth, your status, your significant business deal somehow granted you that right." He tried to speak, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. You said something that really stuck with me. You said that people like you drive the economy, create make deals, move billions of dollars, and you're probably right about that. I'm sure you're very good at what you do. I'm sure you are important in your field. But here's what you don't understand. None of it gives you permission to treat other human beings like they're beneath you." I leaned forward. "Do you know why I choose to travel as I do, Mr. Thornton? Why I don't surround myself with an entourage or demand special treatment? Because the moment we start believing we are inherently more important than anyone else, the moment we begin to think the universal principles of respect and kindness don't apply to us, that's the moment we lose touch with our essential humanity, with the divine spark that resides within every individual." The silence in that room was profound. Marcus Thornton sat there, his expensive suit suddenly seeming like a costume, his confident demeanor completely shattered. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say." "That's a start," I told him. "Not knowing what to say is better than saying the wrong thing with complete confidence. Now let me tell you what's going to happen. First, Sarah is going to receive a commendation and a bonus for her professional handling of a difficult situation. Captain Rodriguez is going to get a letter of appreciation for his leadership. Every staff member who witnessed what happened today is going to know that their dignity and their professional judgment is valued and protected by this airline." He nodded slowly, waiting for the hammer to fall on him. "As for you, Mr. Thornton, I have a decision to make. I could ban you from flying with us. I could revoke your platinum status. I could make sure that every airline in our partnership network knows about your behavior today. And believe me, part of me wants to do exactly that." His face had gone from pale to ashen. "But I'm not going to do that. Do you know why? Because I hold a fundamental belief in redemption and the incredible capacity for change within every human heart. I believe that sometimes it takes a difficult moment, a direct confrontation with our own shortcomings, to awaken us to the path of personal growth. Today you were given a stark reflection of a part of yourself. The profound question now is, what will you choose to do with that mirror?" I pulled out a card and slid it across the table to him. "This is the contact information for our customer relations department. not to file a complaint. You don't get to do that, but to issue apologies. I want you to compose sincere, heartfelt apologies, not corporate statements, but genuine expressions of regret to Sarah, to Captain Rodriguez, and to every staff member who was impacted by your behavior today. These apologies should convey a true understanding of the hurt and disrespect you caused. He picked up the card with shaking hands. Second, your platinum status will be suspended for 6 months. During this period, you will experience air travel like every other passenger. My hope is that this will offer you a fresh perspective, a tangible reminder that every single person on that plane, from the person in the very back to the person waiting at the gate, is a child of God, someone's beloved family, someone who deeply matters. I understand, he said hoarsely. Third, and this is perhaps the most crucial point, I want you to deeply reflect on that $50 million deal you're so focused on. Consider all the money, the prestige, the success it promises. And then I want you to ask yourself, if you gain the entire world professionally, but in doing so you diminish your own soul by treating others with contempt, what lasting victory have you truly achieved? What kind of legacy are you carrying? I stood up and walked to the door, then turned back to him one last time. You know, Mr. Thornton, when I concluded, my voice gentle but resolute, in my years as a pastor, as a businessman, and as a human being, I've come to understand this profound truth. The true measure of a person is not found in their bank account, their title, or the magnitude of their worldly accomplishments. It's found in the simple, yet powerful acts of kindness and respect they extend to others, especially when there's no perceived personal gain. It's how they treat people when they believe no one important is watching. Today you stumbled in that test, but here's the wonderful news. Every day is a new beginning. You've been given a powerful moment of clarity. Don't let it be in vain. Don't waste this opportunity to rise higher. I opened the door and left him sitting there alone in that conference room. The rest of my trip to New York was uneventful. I had my meeting, handled my business, and flew back a few days later. I made a point of checking in with our customer relations department the following week. Marcus Thornton had sent letters, real ones, apparently quite heartfelt, according to the staff who received them. He'd acknowledged his behavior, apologized without making excuses, and even included personal touches that showed he'd actually thought about what each person experienced. 6 months later, when his platinum status was reinstated, he sent me a letter directly. I still have it somewhere. In it, he explained that that day on the plane had been a turning point for him. He'd been so focused on success, so driven by competition and ambition, that he'd lost sight of basic humanity. He'd started therapy. He'd reconnected with his family who he'd been neglecting, and he'd made changes in how he ran his business, treating his employees with more respect and dignity. I don't know if that transformation truly endured, but I pray it did. I hold on to the hope that when faced with a reflection of our less than best selves, we find the courage within to embrace a better way to live out the higher calling of our humanity. What did I take away from that experience? This profound truth. True respect isn't a commodity you earn through your bank account, your title, or your worldly achievements. It is an inherent birthright of every human being simply by virtue of being created. The gentle soul in economy, the dedicated flight attendant serving with a smile, the skilled pilot guiding the plane, the high-powered businessman in his expensive suit. Every single one of us deserves to be treated with fundamental dignity and grace. To those of you who have been blessed with success, with resources, with influence, remember that these are not entitlements, but sacred trusts. They do not elevate you above others. Rather, they call you to a higher level of responsibility in how you uplift and treat those around you. Because ultimately, when all the superficial layers are peeled away, the titles, the money, the accomplishments, what truly remains, what truly defines our journey, is the footprint of kindness we leave behind. That's the legacy that resonates. That's what impacts eternity. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you might be tempted to use your position or power as a weapon, pause. Remember, you never truly know the journey or the position of the person standing before you. That seemingly ordinary passenger might be a pastor, a television preacher, and a businessman who owns the airline. But far more importantly, they are a precious human being, deserving of every ounce of your respect. May you choose to live a life that reflects that truth. Amen. If you were inspired by this message, please do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss any of our future messages of hope and transformation. Also, give this video a like to help spread this lesson of respect to more people, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had a moment where you had to choose grace over conflict? I'd love to hear your story. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to always choose kindness. I'll see you in the next video.